Great. I can also see you folks on this side, which is great for me. So I was saying, before we get into anything, right? The agenda is to now start planning your calendar, and thank you for sharing how you found the case books to be similar. Now, as we start, of these four options, where do we stand as a group? If you guys just want to react, just want to understand what kind of a group we are working with today. Feel free to write in chat, unmute yourselves, annotate, whatever works for you. So if you haven't really ever gone through a casebook, that's your option A. If you've started, profitability is generally the first with everyone begins with, and hence that's option B. Um, some basics have been covered. That's your option C, and that includes a couple of frameworks, etc. And some people have generally almost done a lot. Okay, I see we're primarily category A here, which is good. In that case, you can directly use. Okay, B is also good. Okay, great. So if there are two archetypes here, right, like A and B, feel free to like unmute yourselves during the session to talk about if anything you find less relatable or more relatable and you want to add on for the benefit of the group, right? Let's start with this. Um, you've got your resources sorted. Now let's try to build the calendar. So let's just directly jump into it. For anyone who's going to look at a casebook the very first time, these are the primary kind of frameworks that you'll find in every casebook. You remember we talked about different sections in the last session. This is referring to your second section where you have your sample cases and frameworks. I'm intentionally not covering the basics of prep. I'll try and do that in the next session where we do two frameworks plus the basics. Today, I also want to help you set up your cadence. So that's why I'm starting with the most voluminous part of the casebook, which is your frameworks. So six mota types of framework. Um, of course, you can read through it. You'll find it in every book. It depends upon what role you're applying for, what level you're applying for, and what kind of a company you're applying for, as to which framework is more important for you. Almost everybody will start with profitability. Almost everybody will continue to market entry. On almost everybody will try unconventional. Number three, four, and five kind of vary depending upon the kind of role you apply for and whether it's an undergrad position or a postgrad position. I'll take a quick pause here. We'll try and get into more depth of each one of them, but at this point, any reactions, any questions? If not, then I'll move to the next page. Okay, let's go ahead. So let's start with all of them one by one. First is profitability. So profitability is very straight. It's basically when you think about the questions are most likely around revenues declining, cost increasing, net profit going down, could be a combination of both, etc. Right? Um, the most basic framework exists in all the case books. This is your entry point to start building a structure, to start asking the right questions, to start getting your scoping, your notes making, your interview prep. So you have to spend maximum amount of your time on profitability. It might feel easy, it might feel basic, it might feel intuitive, which is good, but you need to spend time here to build your muscle. I've also sort of developed a consolidated calendar where you'll see that I've given maximum amount of time to profitability. Do not try to wrap this up in 3-4 days saying that this is very easy and I've got this. Two more types of cases, do some quant heavy cases, do some abstract profitability cases, do some financial profitability cases. There's a whole range and diversity on types of cases, but spend your time here. I'll just pause if you have any questions on profitability first. Let me also admit people here, which is a bit of a challenge. Any questions on profitability, folks? And then we otherwise continue to market entry. But at the bare minimum, please try to spend at least more than a week here. Do more than 10, 12, 15 cases. Get your muscles right. Get your structured thinking in place, and then move on to the second one.
Chirag, just one small question here. You talked about some particular categories of even profitability cases. How would you recommend that we approach each of these categories, and like where can I cover, let's say, all these categories from?
So one where you can cover again goes back to the fact that every casebook has everything, right? So you don't need to worry about resources of where you can find them. Um, each casebook splits cases across their difficulty levels: easy, medium, high, right? Start with the easy ones, do at least four,
Mm-hmm.
five easy, then move on to a medium kind of case, which would be like that will now start looking for like financial cases, that will start testing a little bit more quant, etc. So by design, as you move toward medium difficulty, you will start exploring more types of cases. Once you're done like 4 5 medium cases, then move to a difficulty level, the hard difficulty level, and do at least like 2 3 cases there. And collectively over a span of like 12 14 cases, you would have tried most of the types of cases. And by design, that will happen in every case. You don't need to worry about going to any second casebook for a particular type. Does that make
Got it.
sense?
Got it. Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions on profitability, folks? Again, this is very important. Please, I have seen candidates jump from profitability in 3 days saying it's very easy. But this is where you build your muscle. This is where you build your base. So spend enough time. Even if it feels easy, spend enough time. Always do your case, do your feedback analysis, map your approach to the casebook approach, compare, see what you would have done better, and then move to the next. Any questions on this? Otherwise, I'll start talking about market entry. Okay, let's talk about market entry. This is the second type of cases which are most common, even at an undergrad level. You'll see the general problem statements are like a company wants to expand internationally, where they should go, or someone is thinking about acquiring a new company in a new geography, should they do it, etc. Right? So it will talk about guesstimates. It will talk about organic entry, inorganic entry. It will most likely test your quant, because in market entry cases you do have to do guesstimates which are numbers heavy, and you have to come to a conclusion basis the numbers as well. So market entry is a different beast altogether. But again, once you have your base with profitability, market entry will start feeling more structured and easier. How can I think there are some folks I need to. Yeah. Any questions on this till then? Okay. Um, at an undergrad level, profitability and market entry make maximum sense. If you have enough time, then explore growth and the other frameworks that I'm going to talk about. Otherwise, you can jump directly from market entry to unconventional. You don't need to really practice for growth, pricing, M&A, etc. At an undergrad level, they are not the expectation in all likelihood. If you have time, do read the frameworks, do try out some cases. But if you're short on time, prioritize profitability, market entry, and unconventional at an undergrad level. At an MBA or a postgrad level, you have to go through all of them, because there you can be asked anything and everything. Um, I'm so sorry, I'm not looking at the screen. So whoever has raised hand, please feel free to unmute yourselves.
Hi Chirag, Kshitij here. I'm extremely sorry I was late for the meeting. I had an internet issue. So can you please help me recap whatever we have done up till now?
No worries. Very shortly, we just started with different frameworks, and we sort of received feedback from people that the case books are similar. I have just started getting into the depth of the content, so you're not missing anything major. Also, feel free to go back and look at the recording, but just respecting everybody's time, I'll continue from this point.
Yeah, thank you.
Hmm.
It's fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so for everyone, profitability and market entry are your go-to basics. Your guesstimates by design will be tested in market entry. Feel free to try them before you get into market entry cases. while you're doing market entry cases or post doing market entry cases. It's completely okay. There is no particular sequencing to it. um, do at least again spend at least a week on market entry. I've written 6 to 8 days, but that's completely subjective. I had spent about like 10 odd days when I was doing market entry. I personally felt market entry to be a lot more difficult than most of the other frameworks, because I would just get lost in a lot of problems that exist out there. But it's up to you, right? Like, spend as much time as you need to spend on this, but these two are your absolute pillars of basics. Then we get into growth type of cases. Now, growth cases will sound very similar to market entry at some level, but growth cases are very broad. These are to a point where it'll start feeling unstructured by design. You will just get a problem statement that, let's say, XYZ e-commerce company wants to expand. What should they do? Now, it can be a vertical integration into something, it can be a horizontal integration into something, it can be acquisition of something completely new, it can be expanding with the same product to a new market, etc., etc. So, growth cases are absolutely open ended. Um, but at the same time, they test your creativity and your structure. They will allow you, if you have built your basic structured thought process with profitability and market entry, to approach it with the right set of questions in a structured manner to reach a logical conclusion. There is no right or wrong answer in a growth case. There's always just a logical answer. At an undergrad level, again, not the most common expectation to do growth. So if you don't have enough time, feel free to skip through it. I'll take a quick pause. Any questions before I move to the next set? Okay. Folks, again, Q&A is the most helpful part of any session. Otherwise, you can always also review the recording. So please feel free to unmute yourselves and ask as many questions as you want. Next, let's move to the pricing framework. Again, pricing not always expected at undergrad level, but these are also one of the most interesting types of problem statements. For example, a new service is being launched. How should we price it? um, there are 2 3 types of ways to pricing: value based pricing, cost based pricing, etc. You will learn all of that in every framework. Again, there is no right answer to pricing, there's always a logical answer to pricing. This is probably going to be more quant heavy because you might have to triangulate some numbers, multiply, divide, etc., and come to a final range in many cases, that this is where the pricing can land. So if you want to particularly try quant cases, you can sort of look at pricing cases, because they will, in all likelihood, test your numbers. These are also shorter cases in general compared to the other frameworks. So you can spend lesser amount of time here. You'll get to test out enough cases. Again, not the basic expectation at undergrad, but at an MBA level, absolutely do it. Then the fifth framework that we have is mergers and acquisitions, which are M&A, or due diligence, which is DD. Very, very theoretical cases at times. So here, knowing the right framework, knowing the right questions becomes extremely important. But at the same time, you will need a lot of direction by design from the interviewer when doing these cases, because an M&A and a DD is not a 20-minute conversation. It has to be a very holistic, comprehensive approach. So you will not be going through every part of the framework. If you open any case book, an M&A or a DD case will have at least 20 elements to the framework. You have multiple check boxes to look at, you have multiple factors to compare against. So in an actual interview, nobody will expect you to go through the entire framework. It's just not possible to do in 20 minutes. There would be a lot of interviewer guidance which would be needed, and they will tell you what part of the framework you need to validate the problem statement against. So just knowing the framework helps. Again, not the basic expectation at an undergrad level. At an MBA level, you can get these cases. My own coordinate at ISB got an M&A case, which was like, it always seems it might not happen, but it happened. And if we don't spend any time at M&A, then it can be a challenge. So if you're in MBA, do try to at least spend some time on this. And then finally, unconventional. Unconventional cases, in my opinion, are the best way to prepare. Once you're done with your basics for your profitability and market entry, start looking at unconventional. You don't need to sequence unconventional at the end. You need to run unconventional in parallel. Unconventional cases have no defined structure. These are the places where your actual structuring gets tested because there is no framework to guide you. Here you start building your own muscle of a yes or a no, a binary framework, a three-way framework, a quadratic framework, etc. Right? You start building your own frameworks, and this is where your actual structure gets tested. Do not sequence unconventional. Always start doing unconventional in parallel once you start feeling a little bit comfortable with structured process. Okay, now I'll again take a pause. I just gave a lot of gyan. Please feel free to ask questions. Anything that you would want me to speak in more detail about? Let's put it that way first. Okay, let me ask, are you guys all aware about, let's say, for example, what an unconventional case is? Anybody who's ever done an unconventional case here?
So Chirag, I've not really done an unconventional case, but I kind of have a very rough idea about what the case could look like. For example, I believe I was reading one of the cases where it didn't make any sense. It was just that this public sector or this government agency wants to create a L&D program for its middle school and high school counties in its country. What would you recommend? So it doesn't really fit into any one of the brackets that we have talked about, and that seems to me like an unconventional case where it categorically you cannot like force fit a framework.
Exactly.
That's what I feel.
Exactly. No, that's very helpful. Unconventional cases do not have a framework. This is where you are creative and you have to be structured. I'll tell you some very fun unconventional cases which I have done. Um, a zoo where the population of red pandas is decreasing. Why is that happening? You just have to think through it. An actress who has received a threat call. How do you help her out? Um, a mother who's lost a child at a fair. How do you help her find the child? Completely abstract. There is absolutely no framework. um, India wants to push for a sport at the Olympics. The sport is squash. How do you do it? So, absolutely abstract. There is no framework to it. You have to think on your feet, be creative, ask first principle questions. And this is where your actual case prep is tested. Because for all the other types of cases, you have a mota framework to guide you. Unconventional cases generally have no framework. You can try and fit something once you're able to ask the right questions and come to a logical place. But till you're there is absolutely no framework. So if you're starting to do your prep, I highly recommend do profitability, do market entry. But once you're feeling slightly comfortable, start doing unconventional. This is where it really gets tested. Any questions on this? Any reactions? You'll have to unmute yourself. I'm sorry, I'm not looking at the screen. So please feel free to speak
Hi,
up.
Chad. I'm Harsh.
Mhm.
So regarding the unconventional cases, right? You said that they don't follow any set particular structure, but uh, from what I have learned about unconventional cases, right? Uh, One of the most effective methods to solve them is to anchor them around any pre-existing framework. So for your first example, right, when you said that the population of red pandas is declining in a particular zoo, so that could essentially be a profitability case wherein the population can be equal to the number of births minus the number of deaths. So like maybe not enough red pandas are being born, or the birth rates are stable, but it's just that they're dying a lot more. So and then we deep dive into each bucket separately.
Absolutely. So that's what I'm saying, right? An unconventional case can be driven by a given framework, but you have to reach a logical place to do that. And to reach that logical place, you have to think on your feet, right? Like right now, there is no book in the world which will tell you birth rate declining, population declining. So do a subtraction of these two. You have to think yourself creatively around this, right? So that's what I'm saying. In unconventional cases, you have to be creative. You have to think on your feet, ask logical questions, and reach a logical place from where you can drive with a framework. But there is nothing which gives you a start to end framework for unconventional.
Okay, I understand.
But no, that's a good way to approach it, right? That's exactly how even I would approach it. With some, of course, like nuances here or there, but yeah, good way to like sort of mellow it down into a profitability case. Any other questions, reactions? Okay. Let me then show you the overall cadence calendar. Um, don't worry about taking a screenshot, of course, right? I'm going to share this presentation. Also, I have once shared this in one of my LinkedIn posts, a complete PDF around this. So you can also go back and check that. Um, like I'd mentioned, right? Your profitability takes the maximum amount of time. And I'm so sorry, this unconventional also does not need to be so late. You started somewhere here. As you start feeling more comfortable with market entry and with profitability, you start doing unconventional. You don't need to wait till the end of the time to do unconventional cases at all. Start building them as early as you want to and start testing your creative thinking with that. Any questions, any reactions to this? I'm going to take a pause here for you to absorb this for a few seconds. This is like a month. If you had a month to prepare, how you could do it, like a month or like 40 odd days, how would you do it? This is very subjective, but it's a place where you can start with. Then, of course, it gives you an objective idea of directionally how much time needs to be given where. We have not talked about two very important things right now. One is your guesstimates, and second is your PI prep. Any questions on this? Okay. Again, please feel free to just go back to the LinkedIn post or the presentation, which I'll be sharing offline. If you want to take this. Um, I've been talking about this a lot, so I'll probably just skip through it. Right. Let me. This was an activity which I was hoping to do in parallel with all of you. Just you could sort of plan it out yourself. It's okay. This you can do offline. This is something which I'll spend a bit of time on because this is very, very important. Four key things which I've seen a lot happening with a lot of candidates. First, front loading all the frameworks. So, like people think that when they pick up a casebook, they'll read through all the frameworks, all of them at once, and that would be helpful, which is never the case. Please do not try to read every framework upfront. Please do not try to memorize every framework upfront. Please do not try to absorb every framework upfront. Take them one framework at a time. Do not front load. It does not help. You will waste time in something which is not efficient. You, anyways, have to do cases in a sequence. Pick a framework when you are ready to do cases related to that framework. Do not try to front load. And again, please feel free to unmute yourselves or raise questions, if any, during the entire process. Um, is someone on unmute? Okay, no worries. Second, which is more for MBA folks and less for undergrad, do not skip M&A cases. Again, many of us end up skipping it, but if it comes up in an interview, you will be caught very strongly blindsided. It happened with my coordinate. The M&A case came, he had prepared for one, so he was able to answer. I, for example, had skipped M&A. I had done barely one or two cases. So if I was asked an M&A case, I would have been very strongly blindsided. So Do not repeat the same mistake that many people like me have made in the past. Do not skip, especially if you're at an MBA level. Also, if you're applying to a particular type of consulting pillar. You remember we did different consulting pillars in the first session. So, for example, the big fours of the world, etc. Right? There's a higher likelihood of a M&A case being asked. So please make sure, if depending upon the role, you're not skipping this. Um, Third is taking feedback lightly. There are lots of nuances to feedback, and I will try and dedicate a lot of time to feedback separately in a session, because the make or break, according to me, in your entire case prep cycle is the feedback evaluation. If you have the right way to capture your feedback, if you have the right way to evaluate your feedback, if you have the right set of people to give you the feedback, etc., etc. So multiple nuances to it, but do not take feedback lightly. Please take it with a pinch of salt. Whatever you hear, try to work on it. Do not ignore. There are methods to do it. Doing a word cloud, for example, is my favorite. Easy, very quickly doable. Finding a constant partner who can see your growth and give you consistent feedback instead of fragmented feedback from multiple people, etc. Right? We'll spend a lot more time on feedback. But I just want to highlight this as a common mistake that taking feedback lightly does not like. And lastly, do not leave your PI prep through all of this. PI prep means personal interview. So, for example, questions like, why do you want to join consulting? Why do you want to join this company? What is your long term goal, etc., etc. Right? These are all the personal interview questions. Most companies have a component of PI interview in their process. So, also try and make sure you work on it. We will have a session entirely for PI prep because it's also one of the most important parts. I'll take a pause again. Any questions, any responses, anything you wanted to speak in more detail about right now?
Chirag, I had one question. What would you recommend should be the journey in terms of having a casing partner? And what I mean by this is, initially, when you're just starting from the very basics, would you recommend having a casing partner from, let's say, day one, when you could be not having enough information, enough knowledge about how to do a case prep? Or would you recommend that initially use, let's say, something like an AI partner where you feed in the information, get feedback, and once you're at a certain level, let's say 2, 3 cases down the line, that's when you go in for a casing partner?
See, I would recommend having a casing partner right from the beginning, because somebody who sees your growth from zero will give you the
Mhm.
most apt feedback, and the most consistent feedback. if you if you're in a position where you can't find a partner, a physical person, or in fact even a virtual person for that matter, right, but at least like a human casing partner, if you're not able to find someone, then your second option is AIs of the world, the GPTs and all, which are great, by the way, right? Like I've also talked about GPT being an amazing casing partner in the past. So they are great, they are
Mhm.
very helpful, but my recommendation would always be to find a human casing partner. And the partner doesn't need to be experienced. The partner just needs to be as
Yeah.
dedicated as you. Both of you from zero is okay. As long as you're both willing to spend enough time consistently to improve. So
Got
don't
it.
try to
Got it. Yep.
find a
That
very
answers the
experienced
question.
partner, but somebody who's sincere enough to do the prep.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. Okay. All right. Thank you.
And I'll give you an example. At most B schools, Indian B schools, there are casing groups that are formed within the campus, right? So, for example, I was a part of a casing group. We were five, 6 people of us. There was one person who had enough casing experience. She had done like consulting roles in the past, etc. But the remaining 5 of us had zero casing experience, but we all did casing together, and all of us went from a zero to a reasonable position over, of course, our own gradual time frame. But we were all consistent, and that is what mattered more than finding 5 other people with enough casing experience.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, the only the only roadblock here I see is that once the MBA starts, finding a casing partner is comparatively easier. It's just
I
that
understand.
I've been trying to think about what to do before the MBA starts so that I can get the consistency. Of course, there's prep lounge, there's these other groups as well. But yeah, I just wanted your take on that.
No, that's absolutely fair. And if you're struggling to find one, GPTs are not bad. They're also helpful. It's just they're not the first option.
Got it. Got it. Great.
And feel
Thank
free to
you.
use our WhatsApp community, right? If you're on our WhatsApp community, um, I had long back tried to form case groups, but that was an absolute failure. But feel free there are some people who are very serious, and I can help you connect with some of them.
Oh, that's awesome. I'll drop you a note
Yeah.
maybe later.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, Chirag, on the casing groups in the WhatsApp group, if we want, we can join it. Like a +1 for that if you take an initiative today or something.
Yeah, I had split, like I legit split some 14 groups, but I don't think they were very active. Um, let's do this. Let me try and think of something on how I can connect people who are more sincere about this internally so that you can find your casing partners.
Yeah, because if we have a casing partner from the group itself, like people who join and attend these meetings, then it would be beneficial if we apply these frameworks right now itself. Like we can start preparing along with the people we met randomly. It would be much more efficient, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Why don't the two of you already start connecting? I think there are at least two people. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, we can.
No, so Chirag, actually, that's a good idea, but I won't take much time on this. Is that you can just create a separate group, and then people who need a casing partner can drop a message with their level, with their expectations, and then whoever is interested can reach out rather than, again, force fitting like three people together in a group and being like, okay, case with each other. It might not always match up, which is why
Yep, yep, yep.
creating different groups might not be a great strategy always. But yeah, we can definitely discuss this
Let
in
me
the
think
group call
about this.
later.
Let me think about this. I will figure out something
Yeah,
for
yeah,
sure.
great. Thank you.
No worries. But any other questions, reactions on these mistakes or anything that we have discussed so far? Okay. I think that's pretty much it then.
Hi Chirag, I
Mhm.
have one doubt.
Yep,
Uh,
that's good.
yeah, I want to ask where you would recommend like practicing the data heavy cases that involve graphs, tables, and charts, and how much time do you think like you should ideally spend while solving such cases?
See, so the B school case books, they don't do a great job at getting you graph based problem statements, because in all honesty, even in interviews, it's not very strongly the likelihood that you'll get a graph based problem statement. But if your question is quant heavy, like I mentioned, every case book divides cases across three difficulty levels: easy, medium, and hard. um, by design, as you do the three archetypes, you will get enough quant heavy cases, irrespective of the case book that you're working with. Which goes back to my previous session that you don't need multiple case books to practice. Any one case book gives you a very similar footing. Now, that being said, there are some types of cases which are more quant heavy compared to the others. For example, like I said, market entry cases have guesstimates, and they force the candidate to do more quant in real time to arrive to a location. Similarly, pricing cases generally ask the candidates to run through numbers and come to a logical conclusion. So, if you want to specifically work on quant heavy cases, you can focus on market entry and pricing. But irrespective, the three difficulty levels will give you enough examples to work through in every case.
Okay, thank you.
Um, any other questions, folks? These are just some things that we have discussed so far. Again, like feel free to read it, absorb it. If you have any questions, again, I'm telling you, the real value of a session is the Q&A. Otherwise, you can get the presentation and the recording anytime. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them right now. Otherwise, we'll call it a day with the next page. These were some questions which I thought might relate to people. If any of these, if you find any of these relatable, please feel free to unmute yourselves and ask me or any additional questions as well. I'm not looking at the chat window, so my apologies if you're typing in the chat window.
Hi, Chirag. Good afternoon. Hargobind this side.
Mhm.
So the sequence which you gave us, is it a hard and fast rule that I have to follow that only, or can I start with guesstimate and then after a week or so I can switch to profitability?
It's absolutely
Would
up to
that
you.
make sense?
Yeah, it's absolutely up to you. Um, Actually, I did not include guesstimate in my cadence here, right? You might have noticed
Mm-hmm.
I only looked at the
Market entry.
six. Yeah, I only looked at the
Yeah.
6 frameworks and I included
Mm-hmm.
guesstimates in them. So guesstimates, PI prep, or those industry primers, right? They all happen outside this cadence. So you
Okay.
can start with. Mhm.
Like I can start with, is it, does it make sense that I start with general guesstimates, like how many golf ball can fit in an airplane, or how many red t-shirt guys wear in Delhi in a particular day, just like that, and then I shift to profitability, and then I go to market entry, like the market size of a company, in which suppose a company wants to enter into a market, what's the market share and all that. So should I start with general guesstimates first? Like, would it help me in any way?
Yeah, yeah. You should always start with a guesstimate if you've never done any guesstimates, right? Otherwise, the market entry cases will start feeling very overwhelming when you reach them. So you should practice some guesstimates. You can run guesstimates and profitability in parallel to some extent because
Mm-hmm.
profitability is lesser on numbers. It's more about building the basics, right? And profitability cases are also fairly straightforward compared to the rest of the frameworks. So that is one time window when you can do both guesstimates and profitability in parallel. Once you're done with that time window, then you get into market entry with a more comfort zone in guesstimates because you won't get to practice guesstimate from scratch once you start market entry because a market
Yeah.
entry has a section of guesstimate, but there's a lot more to it.
Okay, thank you, got it.
Yeah. Any other questions, folks?
Yes. Like in the first session, you particularly talked about the business analyst role to start with, like for undergrads. And so about that role, I wanted to ask, like, in terms with our today's session, what are the what is the most important skill that we could build and that drives the decision factor, like when we are giving our interviews? So what is the most important deciding factor that will get us hired or will not get us hired? And like given the same question, like how do we incorporate like SQL and Excel into it? Because like most of the all the JDs on like LinkedIn for the same role have SQL like as the topmost skill required, and Excel as well.
Right. So one, like I've always said in all my sessions, right? Like I am no hiring expert, so I can absolutely not tell you anything related to hiring. What I can tell you is at an undergrad level, profitability and market entry are the most important frameworks as a part of the session that we have had today, right? And then unconventional can be a bit of a practice, but a combination of these three is generally enough at an undergrad level. You don't need to go through all the other frameworks in so much depth with so much practice or even feel the pressure to do that because in general that is not the expectation. Now to answer your second bit, I honestly don't have enough information about SQL or Excel at a business analyst level to give you any reasonable response. But what I can say is, um, in the era of GPT, I don't think an SQL or an Excel would be the deciding factor anymore because I have zero SQL skills. But if you tell me I can work tomorrow with GPT for 2 hours and I can build you any SQL dashboard in the world. So I don't think an SQL is ever going to be the deciding factor or an Excel is ever going to be the deciding factor. They are extremely equalized in today's world now.
Fair enough. Makes sense. And just another question that like consulting roles evolve like mostly around business strategy, right? So for that, do we need to prepare for like economics, like as a prerequisite, like micro and macro, both of them?
Okay, again, these questions are not really relevant to the session, but let me just answer this. Um, so there is no expectation for anyone to be an expert in micro or macro, especially at an undergrad level again. At an MBA, you already study these, so there is a little bit of an expectation for you to be at least aware and comfortable to talk about them. Um, while you don't need to be an expert in most of the things, a first principles based understanding would be good. For example, just knowing a supply demand based market setup is good enough. Nobody will expect you to write down equations, which happens in an MBA, but at an undergrad level, at least knowing that the market settles when the supply and demand are equal, that's more than enough. If that answers your question.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
No worries. Any other questions, folks? Anything related to these frameworks, the cadence that we talked about, the different kind of common mistakes that we all do when starting with it. Okay, if not, this is my only request before the next session. We will now start discussing the frameworks. So prior to the next session, if you could just do like few small things, right? Like make sure you're ready with your one or two case books that you're going to look at, right? Like make that conscious decision. These are the only two books I'll look at all. I'm not going to feel FOMO. These are the two books. Pin down a start date from where you can set up your cadence. Do a rough cadence setup. Try to set up some sort of a feedback log so that when we connect next time, when we start discussing through frameworks, you have a building block at the back of your mind. Any questions on this? If I can help you take any of these into action. Okay. If not, that's my only request. Try and take care of these before we connect next time. We'll probably not have a session next Sunday.